She is classed as a serial killer. She was a nurse, but suffering from the Munchausen syndrome by proxy, which is a mental illness where you basically think that someone, either yourself or a member of your family, has something wrong with them, and you're persistent about the fact that that person has something wrong with them when they don't. Normally. Anyway, I have found this off murderpedia.org. So, she was born on the 4th of October 1968, and she has 4 victims. So, she was dubbed the Angel of Death. She was convicted of killing 4 children and injuring others on the ward that she worked in the hospital in Lincolnshire. She recovered 13 life sentences in 1993. She is currently in the top security Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottinghamshire. The minimum term she was required to serve before becoming eligible for parole was 30 years, though she would only be released at the point if no longer a threat to the public, which she always will be. Her motives have never been fully explained. According to one theory, she suffers from Munchausen syndrome, a controversial personality disorder which supposedly prompts its sufferers to falsify illnesses. In 2006, the BBC made a dramatisation of the story, titled Angel of Death, the Beverly Allitt story, and starring Charlie Brooks. The crimes were committed over a period of 59 days between February and April 1991 in the children's ward at Grantham and Stephen Hospital, Lincolnshire, where she was employed as a state-enrolled nurse. She administered large doses of insulin to at least 2 victims, and a large air bubble was found in the body of another, but police were unable to establish how all the attacks were carried out. In May 1993 at Nottingham Crown Court, she received 13 life sentences for the crimes. Mr. Justice Latham's sentencing told the lady that she was a serious danger to others and was unlikely to ever be considered safe enough to be released. So, the victims were Liam Taylor, and he was only 7 months old. He was admitted to the ward for a chest infection and was murdered on the 21st of February 1991. Timothy Hardwick was 11 years old. He suffered cerebral palsy and was admitted to the ward after having an epileptic seizure. He was murdered on the 5th of March 1991. Kaylee Desmond was 1, and she was admitted for a chest infection, and Allitt attempted to murder her on the 8th of March 1991, but the child was resuscitated and transferred to another hospital where she fully recovered. Paul Crampton was 5 months old, admitted to the ward for a chest infection on the 20th of March 1991. Allitt attempted to murder him with insulin overdose on 3 occasions. The day before, he was transferred to another hospital where he recovered. Bradley Gibson was then 5 years old. He was admitted to the ward for pneumonia. He suffered 2 cardiac arrests on March March the 21st, 1991, due to Aled administering insulin overdoses before he was transferred to another hospital where he recovered to. Yikung Chan was 2 years old, and he was admitted following a fall on the 21st of March. He suffered an oxygen destruction attack before he was transferred to another hospital where he was recovered. Becky Phillips was 2 months old, and she was admitted to the ward for gastroenteritis on the 1st of April. She was administered with an insulin overdose by Allen, and she died at home 2 days later. Katie Phillips was 2 months old, and she was the twin of Becky. She was admitted to the ward as a precaution following the death of her sister. She had to be resuscitated twice after unexplained apneic episodes, which were later due to be found their insulin and potassium overdoses. Sorry, Abigail. She's a pain in my bum at the minute. You can probably hear her purring. She doesn't tend to leave me alone. She's going to be playing with the wire on my microphone. Following the second time, where she stopped breathing, she was transferred to another hospital, but by this time had suffered permanent brain damage, partial paralysis and partial blindness due to the oxygen deprivation. In a twist of fate, her parents had been so grateful to Alan's care of Becky, they had asked her to be Katie's godmother. Oh my gosh. Kitty, you go. Go. Claire Beck was 15 months old. She was admitted to the ward following an asthma attack on the 22nd of April. After being put on a ventilator, she was left alone in Alan's care for a short interval, during which time she had a cardiac arrest, which she was resuscitated but died after a second cardiac arrest, again following a period where she was left alone with Alan. So Alan attacked 13 children, 4 fatally, over a 59-day period before she was brought up on charges for her crimes. It was only following the death of Claire Beck that medical staff became suspicious of the number of cardiac arrests on the children's ward, and the police were called in. It was found that Alan was the only nurse on duty for all the attacks on the children, and she had also had access to the drugs. It's just words fail you, don't they? So, on the 6th of December 2007, the High Court ruled that Alan would have to serve at least 30 years in prison, meaning, so 2022, which is next year, she'll be 54 and she can apply for parole. I don't think they'll allow her to come out though. She is one of Britain's most notorious serial killers, the Angel of Death. Her murderous spree was all the more shocking because she would befriend the parents of the victims, and they entrusted her with the care of their children. As a child, Beverly would use factitious injuries in order to gain attention. She took to wearing bandages and casts over wounds but not allow them to be examined. As a teenager, she was overweight. She began spending excessive amount of time in hospitals with numerous physical complaints. At one point, she convinced a surgeon to remove a perfectly healthy appendix. When they realised what she was doing, she would doctor shop, moving up from one physician to the next. She attended Grantham College in Lincolnshire and trained as a nurse. Her bizarre behaviour continued, though, throughout her training. While working at a nursing home, she was suspected of smearing feces on the walls. Her attendance during her training was poor due to her many illnesses, and as a result she failed nursing examinations. But she was still able to gain a position at Grantham and Kesteven hospitals in Lincolnshire in 1991. That's so bad. You just don't know. Some people are just so strange, aren't they? It's just nuts. But yeah, so that's Beverly. Let me get a picture of her. Just give me one sec. So, this is Beverly. That's what she looked like when she was convicted. And this is what she's looking like at the minute. It's just an evil, evil lady. I scroll down. You can see some pictures of her. Cool. So I'll do another quick one quickly so I found someone called Carl Bluestone, who was a police officer. He was born in 1965, and on August the 28th, 2001, he became a murderer. So after his shift, he went for a drink in the pub with officers from Windmill Street Station. He settled down in front of the television to watch police soap opera when he had got home, The Bill, then murdered his pregnant wife and 2 preschool children with a claw hammer and hanged himself in the garage with rope that he'd brought earlier that day. Their 2 infant children were injured but survived the attack. He had been arrested for domestic violence in 1994 and 1999, but no charges had been made against him. Which is shocking, really, because if you have been arrested as a police officer, then surely you shouldn't be a police officer anymore, regardless of whether they actually press charges or not. He swallowed a bottle of pills in the back of the police car during the second arrest, and his stomach had to be pumped at the hospital. He had subsequently taken time off sick, and Kent Police had reassigned him to a unit dealing with prevention of criminal damage which targeted children. He and his wife had a rocky marriage, and they both had affairs and run-up debts of over £25,000. Jill, from Middlesbrough, worked full-time with Basildon Council and earned far more than her husband. She and her 4 children were members of the local Methodist congregation. P.C. Bluestone's former wife and first child lived nearby, as did his parents. So, he bludgeoned his wife and 2 young sons to death at the family home before hanging himself. Officers were called to the semi-detached house in a quiet residential area of Kent, following reports of a domestic incident, but found shocking scenes described by one as horrific. Bodies included those of Constable's 18-month-old and 3-year-old sons were found in separate rooms of the house in Gravesend. Detectives said that the incident was treated as a murder-suicide. Carl was 36, and so was his wife Jill and her son Henry III. The couple's 3 other children were rushed to Darren Valley Hospital in Dartford, where the 18-month-old Chandler died of his injuries. All the children were dressed for bed when the officers found them. The survivors were Jack, who was 8. He was in a critical but stable condition. Jessica, 7, who escaped with only minor injuries. It's just so sad, isn't it? It's just nuts how that happens to people. The girl actually ran out of the house and was screaming, saying, "Daddy's trying to hurt me." And that's obviously when the police were called. It's just awful. So his wife was found dead in the kitchen. So Jill was found dead in the kitchen. And the body of their son Henry, who was 3, was found at the bottom of the stairs. It's horrible. They had a funeral on September the 7th, 2001. The mother and son's funeral was in Middlesbrough. Mrs. Bluestone's coffin was the first to be taken to the church, followed by the tiny wooden caskets of her 2 children. They were led by Reverend Helen Jobbing, who conducted the service in front of a large crowd of mourners. During the 25-minute service, Minister spoke warmly about the lives who had lost. It's just horrific that people can do that to their own families. It's horrific how anyone could ever hurt a child, let alone your own. It's just unspeakable, really. But yeah, I am going to crack this up because it's going to be 20 minutes nearly, and I've got to try and edit this on my phone and upload it quickly. And it takes a little bit longer when it's on my phone. This little kitty. But I hope you've kind of enjoyed this, and if you do, let me know and I'll do some more via my phone, because it does seem like the easier option at the minute.